Hi guys, welcome to another Road Pilgrim car review, and today we are reviewing the all-new Smart #1 electric premium compact SUV. That was a bit of a mouthful, but anyway, here, cute little car behind me. This is the Smart #1. For those of you who don't know, Smart is actually it's not a new brand. It's been in Europe for a long time, but it is the first time that it's officially in Singapore through Cycle & Carry, so we're all very excited for it. And the first car that they have decided to bring to Singapore shores is actually a premium compact SUV known as Smart #1. This cute little car that you see behind me is of course the non-performance variant, and there is a Brabus spec variant of this as well that hopefully we'll get to review in the very near future. But for today's review, what we're going to do is we're going to go check out its exterior, show you around the car, because after all it's the first time that many of you are seeing the car. We're going to jump into the interior and show you what goes on inside, and we'll spend a little bit more time showing you the interior and its layout as well, because once again it's the first time that you're seeing it. And then we're going to go take it for a drive and share with you some of our thoughts. But before we do all that, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your used car for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, because through that link we'll be able to provide you the best possible quote and valuation for your used car. So please check it out. It's free to inquire. In fact, if you need an insurance renewal quote, we can do that as well. Alright, so with that, let's get on with the review. Let's go. Alright, so jumping straight into the review, this is the exterior of the Smart #1 premium compact SUV. It's a little bit of a quiet taste, if you ask me. I think it's really quirky. I don't think it's a car that instantly strikes you as beautiful, but it is a car that instantly strikes you as unique and probably a little bit premium, because it does have some very nice touches around the car. And I'll show them to you in a little bit. But generally the car is quite follows sort of a more bulbous or more rounded styling trend. There aren't a lot of sharp edges on the car. So for those of you who are into very muscular looking cars, this is probably not something that is up your alley. But for those of you who have been looking at cars like maybe like the Atto 3, or maybe like an Aura Good Cat, you'll be more used to this quirky styling and more used to this sort of rounded edges that you see around the car. So at the front, you've got a very neat looking front fascia. Nothing too fancy going on. Of course, on the Brabus spec, you get a little bit more bells and whistles in terms of styling. But in this base variant, things are kept quite simple. And of course, you got the Smart logo here. I'm not so sure about these blue tinges on the headlamps. Not so sure how I feel about them. In terms of wheels, these are 19-inch standard, and these come with the sort of aero rims for better dynamics, or not dynamics, efficiency, or to reduce drag on the car. And then along the side as well, you've got some pretty cool looking bits of body kit at the bottom. This car uses sort of disappearing handles, so you get them here like that. Sorry, it says Smart, and then you can open up the car door. So pretty cool. I like it. Now, ideally, I feel like this car would sit better and look better if the suspension was a little bit lower, if the springs were a little bit lower. I feel like the wheel gap is a little bit big at the moment, but I think Smart have kind of done this to kind of accentuate the fact that this is, after all, a compact SUV. And not really a crossover. But I think that's very subjective, individual preferences. So maybe leave in the comments what you think about the wheel gap, whether you think this is great, it looks good or not. In the C-pillar, you've got a Smart logo. This doesn't really do anything. Initially, I thought this might be the charging port, and I think that would be a very cool looking charging port, but alas, the charging port is actually down here. Yeah. And then of course, you have the rear, featuring a sort of a full-length light bar. I've actually never seen the light bar in person because I'm always the one driving it, but I assume that it looks pretty nice. It reminds you of an EQA, doesn't it? Like an EQA SUV with the same sort of shape on the lights. I think it does. But yes, let's check out the boot on the car. So this is fully automatic. And boot space in the car is not fantastic. It is rather compact, but I think this has been done to enhance the amount of space that you have inside the car, and later we'll take a look as well, because this car is actually quite large on the inside. Pretty good legroom for its size, but obviously something has to give, right? You've got a compact footprint, you've got a large interior, so I guess the logical thing is that the boot space is reduced a little bit, but you would still be able to fit, you know, some small size luggage in the boot. Grocery shopping is probably fine. You know, basically getting around Singapore is not going to be a problem with this boot. So slightly smaller boot than its competition, slightly larger or a lot larger in the cabin. So I think that's a good thing in most cases. Alright, so with that, let's actually jump inside the car and check out its interior to see what goes on inside such an exciting new premium compact SUV. Alright guys, so for the next part of this review, we are in the cabin of the Smart #1. Welcome to the cabin. Very nice looking, very unique looking. Some of you might have noticed that when I stepped into the car, my seat and closed the door, the seat actually moved forward. So there is a form of comfort access in the Smart #1, which I think is necessary for a car that brands itself as a premium compact SUV. So these are some of the nice features that you have that make your life a little bit easier. And this is also coupled with the fact that comfort access takes it one step further as well. So as you walk away from the car or approach the car unlocks and locks by itself. So you don't really have to worry about that. Although, you know, the key fob is actually a pretty nice piece of kit. So this is the key fob. Very nice and unique. It's got a nice round shape, so no sharp edges. This feels like it would fit very nicely in your pocket. It's a little bit on the big side, large side, but you know, nothing too offensive. I think it looks pretty cool. Real conversation starter as well. So yeah, but unfortunately you won't really get to use this that much, because this is going to be in your bag or your pocket as you get in and out of the car, because the car does it for you. But anyway, I digress. Sorry about that. Okay, inside the car, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of Mercedes vibes in here. This center console here feels very W204 C-Class in my opinion. In fact, I think this piece of kit looks extremely similar, but it's a good thing, I guess, to be compared to a Mercedes-Benz. I know that Smart as a brand is a rather unique one and doesn't really share anything to do with Mercedes, but nonetheless they are related in some small way. So I think it's a good affiliation to have. But diving straight into the features of the car, and I think we're going to spend a little bit more time here today, because it's the very first smart car that we are reviewing on the channel, and the very first time anybody in Singapore has really probably seen a review of a locally sold smart car unit. So let's dive into a little bit more detail. So in terms of the entire dashboard, it's going to be quite modern looking, a lot of metallic finishes, matte chrome sort of vibes. The door cards are not particularly luxurious if you ask me, but if you look what's in front of you, I really like this sort of matte chrome finish that does make the car feel quite futuristic, quite young, and quite premium. And this is also backed up by the fact that you've got a stitched leather dash, so you can see the stitching, and when you can see the stitching, naturally the overall vibes of the car just feels a bit more elevated. You know, the entire feel and the lux factor of the car is just elevated a little bit more. Front and center, you've got a large clear infotainment unit. This is touchscreen, of course, and I must say it's one of the most lively looking infotainment units that we have seen in a while, in the sense where also because we haven't had a smart car before, the infotainment interface is brand new to us and feels fresh. It doesn't feel like something we've already seen for 2 years. You know, it's got this novel factor which I kind of like. Graphics are clear. System is okay, it's quite fast, nothing too laggy, but of course, being a brand new system, you probably will have to get used to it. You know, it's not the same as like jumping from one Mercedes to another or one BMW to another, where the infotainment units are pretty much the same. In this car, you probably have to get used to it. One of the things I really liked about it is how the drive modes are presented, and right now we are in the drive mode screen, and basically it shows this funky looking animated globe, and each particular world on the globe depicts a different drive mode. So what do I mean? Maybe I'll just show you. I'm not sure if you can see it actually. I think you probably can, but there's this like playground that depicts sports mode, and then an eco city that depicts eco mode, and then a modern future city that depicts comfort mode. So just a little bit of a quirky, unique feature or touch of individuality that helps the car to set itself apart from its competition. Aside from that, wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, this is pretty standard. You've got a wireless charging pad here as well, where you can put your phone. Very nice and convenient space. It looks smaller than it is, but full-size iPhone should be able to fit in here. And then of course, you know, using wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto, you can put in your Apple CarPlay and so on and so forth, and play your music, use your maps. Yeah. Driving menus are also pretty in-depth. At the moment, you only have medium or high regenerative braking settings, so no low regen settings. That's something that you probably have to get used to. I hear that Smart is working on a low regenerative braking mode, but not sure how that's going to pan out at the moment. But just to bring your attention to some of the slightly more unique things, I think Smart have also done their best to reduce the amount of buttons that you see outside, and one of the clear examples of this is that the door mirrors are now adjusted.
Use the buttons on the right hand side of the steering wheel to adjust the angle of the door mirrors.
Thank you for explaining that on my behalf. So basically you select the right or left door mirror here, and then you use the buttons here to kind of adjust the thing. So very Tesla style, if I were to be very honest. I'm not a big fan of this because when you are driving and you require some quick adjustments, you have to go through your infotainment unit to get there, whereas in a traditional setup you can just adjust it right here. But from an aesthetic standpoint, from a techie standpoint, I guess I can understand why they made it this way, because that's just the way that most cars are going today. Of course, you can adjust many other things here as well, including many color combinations on the ambient lighting. So this is quite a lot. I hear it's like 64 combinations or something like that. I think my daughter would much prefer to play with this than I will. She likes the pink stuff, so I'll make it pink. And then yeah, all your driver aids are also in these menus, and you can of course go to this thing called quick control, where you have like the most frequently used functions in the car. Aside from that, cup holders and another phone holder here actually that's very neatly stored. This sliding mechanism, I must say, feels very premium, very nice to touch and very nice to use. There is another storage bin here, which is actually quite large for the size of the car. I'm actually quite surprised, and it would appear there's actually an aircon vent inside here, so your cubby is actually sort of refrigerated. You can put something, obviously you shouldn't be putting frozen products inside, but I think if you want to keep your drink cool, this would be a lovely touch. Something nice to put in here. Okay, so that's that for the cabin, the front side of the cabin. Oh, sorry, I missed out. Very interesting digital driver's display. It's only about this size. Very neat, fits very nicely within the field of view that you can get through the top half of your steering wheel. Nothing too obstructive actually, and really just the information that you need. So we've got range, state of charge, we've got the speed, drive mode, and then of course your entertainment information. So whatever song is playing on your Apple CarPlay. I believe this should be customizable as well. I haven't had the chance to really go and play with it, but I think you'll probably be able to customize instead of entertainment information, you can probably get something else. But I think speed, state of charge, and drive modes are probably standard. Something, you know, once again, something very unique about the car that you don't see on any other brand at the moment. But yes, for now, let's jump into the back seat and check out how the Smart #1 is to live with if you have a family. Hi. Okay, so from the outside of the car, you can see that the footprint is quite compact, and you would automatically assume that this is going to be a pretty small car in the cabin, but you would be wrong, because this driver's seat is actually in my comfort access mode. So this is the seat position that allows me to get out of the car. When I get into the car, this is probably going to move forward another maybe 3 to 4 inches, which means that I will have even more leg room than I have now. And even now, leg room is actually pretty respectable. I'm 175 meters tall, and I already have this amount of leg room. So a smaller person would definitely be very comfortable in the back of this car. And if I'm actually driving, there's a driver in the seat and the seats move forward, you will have even more room, a more generous leg room. So pretty happy with the way space utilization has been carried out in the Smart #1. I think it's very cool. In the rear here, I think the level of luxury on the door cards is pretty standard as the front, synonymous with the front. You've got these cheese grater style speakers, remind you of another brand? Yeah, I think it does. But in any case, a rear aircon vents. So this is not one of those entry-level budget cars where, you know, you don't get aircon vents at the rear. This is proper premium luxury SUV, so you do get aircon vents at the rear. However, these are not climate control specific, so you follow whatever is the climate control settings in the front. And then in the rear, of course, you've got individual lights. There is a sort of a panoramic roof as well, a roof blind, but I'm not going to open it up. But I would imagine that this will actually, you know what, let's just open it up. So this should help the cabin to feel even more airy and large. Personally, I don't think it's a real deal breaker, but if you're carrying small kids in the car, like toddlers, I think they will be very entertained by something like that. And obviously this is quite heavily tinted, so you don't really get the glare of the sun in. I think it's quite well managed, but if you put your hand to the glass, you do feel like there is a little bit of heat from the glass. So no issue. If you don't like it, no problem, just close it. If I were the one driving this car, I would probably close it half the time. But aside from that, in the rear, floor is actually quite flat, almost completely flat. But because it is still quite a compact car, I probably wouldn't recommend carrying 3 passengers in the rear. What I would recommend though is that 2 passengers are going to feel quite comfortable in the rear here. And there's actually, because of the amount of legroom that you have, fitting a rearward facing child seat via these ISOFIX points are also not going to be a real difficulty if you ask me. I think it's going to be quite manageable in that sense. So yeah, pretty happy in the cabin here. Let's jump back into the driver's seat and take the car for a drive. Let's go. Alright, so it is now time to drive the Smart #1 and to see how it does on the roads. But to get some basic specifications out of the way first, this Smart #1 has a 66 kilowatt hour battery, which is actually quite conservative. And through this battery pack, Smart says that you can get about 420 kilometers of range. Of course, in the real world, that probably translates to something around the mid or to high 300 kilometers, which I think is okay because this is, after all, a compact SUV. So I don't think you are, it's still going to be more of a city car rather than a cross-country, long road trip kind of car. So I think the amount of range probably works quite well within Singapore. And the smaller battery pack will probably be quite easy to charge as well, meaning it won't take up so much time as compared to something that is a lot larger. In terms of power, we've got a very, very good amount of power from this car, which actually also kind of shows me that the car's kind of efficient, because from this battery pack, you've got 420 kilometers of range. In terms of power, you've got a single electric motor in this particular variant. Of course, the Brabus version has a dual electric motor, but this one here, right here, it has a single electric motor, rear-wheel drive format, and this is good for about 268 horsepower and 340-ish Newton meters of torque. So quite a powerful car. 0 to 100 is 6.7 seconds. So this is you know, obviously, you know, we live in a time where we're very used to seeing like fast cars being 3 seconds fast or 4 seconds fast, but realistically speaking, for a car like that, 6.7 seconds is very, very quick, and it's going to be quicker than what most of you are going to require on a day-to-day basis. It is a rather, you know, it is a car that is set up in a rather sporty way, and you can feel that quite immediately when you drive the car. Steering weight is also quite nice. It's not overly light, not feathery light like you get in some other cars. So from a driver's perspective, I do prefer something that has a little bit more weight to it. Feels like a more traditional driving experience, so to speak. Going over the humps in my condo, you can instantly feel that this car is set up to be a little bit more firm than usual. Well, not than usual, because we don't really have a benchmark per se, but if I compare this to other, you know, to other cars in its segment, I would say the suspension setup is a little bit on the firmer side. So you do get a little bit more feedback from the roads and from the humps. But the good thing about that is that this car probably handles a little bit better than most of the cars in its segment as well. So you combine rear-wheel drive and you combine the fact that it's got a very, very good, not very good, but a very firm suspension setup, and what you get is a car that is actually quite driver oriented. There's some massive roadworks in front of me now, so I'm not very sure what's going on. But in any case, once we get out on the highway, I'll show you a little bit more about how the car runs. But just to share some thoughts about the Smart #1 as I'm driving it. First of all, I think I'm attracting quite a bit of stares. I think people are quite intrigued as to what the #1 is about. I think that's partially down to the way it looks. It's quite funky, it's quite quirky, but it's also down to the fact that it's a completely new brand in Singapore, so to speak. Of course, you know, in the past there were some very ad hoc versions of the Smart 4.2 around, but under Cycle and Carriage officially brought in, this is the very first smart car that we are going to see in Singapore. And I guess that brings about a little bit of a novelty factor for people as well. So at least for the next year or two, people are going to see this as the brand new car or the brand new brand. I'm not sure how much value that has to you, or that or how much value that brings to your life, but definitely people are going to be looking at this car. They're going to be asking you about this car. In fact, just yesterday when I was driving into my condominium, my security guard was immediately very fascinated and asked me what brand of car this was. So if you're into having the latest, cutest, smartest thing, pun intended, then this is probably a car you want to look at. Now let's talk about owning this car, because I think that's going to be a real point of discussion and consideration. Now, the Smart #1 is positioned as a sort of premium compact SUV. That means that it does go up against some very prominent segment mates, and at current price point, so obviously when you watch this review, I'm not sure when you're going to watch this, but you know, pricing in Singapore might have changed, because obviously with COE prices fluctuating, that's always a consideration. What's going on, man? Are we ever going to get to turn? Alright, thank you, Mr. Policeman. yeah, so premium compact SUV, and at current price point, this version of the Smart #1 is going to cost you around $240-ish thousand to put on the road. Now, that isn't exorbitant in terms of, you know, it's not a huge amount of money to spend on a car. There are many cars in this segment, but there are also many very good options in this segment, and that makes it a very competitive segment. So for reference sake, for 260,000 you can get an iX1, which is the electric X1. You've got a bit more space, you've got a bit more a more well-rounded package, but you do get a little bit less style, a little bit less of the unique factor, and a little bit less fun, I guess, in the way that the car is set up. And what do I mean by that? Because aside from being quite quick, you've got a really nice road feel with the Smart #1. In fact, I would liken it to driving a Mini, or, you know, in the Brabus spec, I would imagine that would feel a bit like a Mini John Cooper Works kind of vibe. It's got firm suspension, takes on corners effortlessly, and generally it's just a very driver-oriented car. I can feel very connected behind the wheel right now. So good speed, good handling as well. Of course, now we're on a highway, you don't really have the chance to chuck the car into a corner per se. But if I were to take this overtake a little bit more aggressively, speed up, signal on, and we go. That feels very comfortable and very assured in the way that it took that corner, or in the way that we maneuvered the car there. It felt very safe, very composed. And I think if I were a driver that prioritized style, driving dynamics, I think the Smart #1 is probably something that you would want to look at. And obviously, if you prioritize other things, then there are other segment mates in this same sort of price point that you can look at as well. But specifically for the Smart #1, I think, I mean, if you look at all the things, you compare the exterior, you know, earlier on we were in the back seat as well, you realize that the car is actually pretty usable. You know, it's got a pretty decent rear cabin for the footprint that you get in the entire car. So yeah, I'm very excited to see how sales are going to go for the Smart #1, because I think it's obviously a new brand. I think there's going to be some novelty factor attached to it, but you know, that doesn't mean that novelty factor is the only thing that the Smart #1 has going for it. It's got a really nice road feel, nice driving dynamics, and it's been really quite a pleasure driving this car, if I'm being honest. Perhaps not as holistically comfortable as some of its other segment mates, but I definitely feel a lot more fun and a lot more engaged when I am driving the #1. In fact, that reminds me, yesterday when I was driving the car, so I was perhaps a little bit more tired, and the car actually detected it. So there's this thing called fatigue mode, where it alerts you that you are, you know, you aren't really concentrating as much, and then they start blasting aircon at you, and this whole cycle runs for about 3 minutes. So it's pretty funny actually, because I guess that adds to the enjoyment and the engagement of driving the Smart #1. Now, if I have missed out anything about the car that you want to know about, and I happen not to have spoken about it, please feel free to put your comments in the comments section below. Put those questions there. We'll see how best we can answer those questions. And you know, if you have found this review useful, or if you've enjoyed it in any way, please consider giving this video a like, and of course sharing it with your friends, and of course subscribing to the channel, because we've got new reviews coming out every single week. We would love for you to join us for those reviews. In fact, June is going to be a pretty exciting month, so we've got quite a few interesting reviews coming up in the next month or so. So stay tuned for that, hit the subscribe button. And before we go off, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your used car for the best price possible, or consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to click the link in the description, because we've got a opt-in form for you to get a quote from us, and we can also help you to consign the car for the best price possible. And if you're in need of an insurance renewal quote because it's that time of the year, there is also another link in the description for us to help you with that. It's all free to inquire, so please consider using these services. And if not, please, as usual, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.